Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Marvel Spider-Man Spectacular Difficulty video walkthrough. This is the mission Dual Purpose, and we will be completing it taking no damage. So there are two types of missions in this game. There's the filler ones in the main plot, and then there are the proper Spider-Man missions. And because this is a 12-minute long video, this means it's got some meat to it, and it's a proper mission. I would really like all the missions to be like this, but alas, the pacing and the delivery of the game is pretty creative. It's all over the place. And we're going to be using the basic traversal to get where we need to go. So if anybody's been watching this and wondering why my city doesn't look very good, it's because I'm not playing on the PlayStation Pro. Apparently on the PlayStation Pro, this game looks very nice. But on the base PlayStation, the character models look amazing and everything up close looks really well. But the city definitely takes a big hit because the hardware isn't quite good enough to render it. And it certainly makes me wish for multi-platform versions of the game. Like if I could get this on PC running, you know, at over 120 frames, it would be so good. And then it would be really nice for it to be on Xbox so that, you know, the Microsoft players could experience the game. And I appreciate that Sony's funded it and, you know, it's a system seller for them and all that good stuff. And it's great. PlayStation's laughing, right? They've got another fantastic first-party title. But I can't help but feel like there are a lot of players really missing out who don't own this console. Because let's face it, right now, has anything all that interesting come out on Microsoft's platform that is exclusive? I can't really name too much, outside of perhaps driving games. And this is a fucking Spider-Man game that's really fun. It's one of those frustrating aspects of just how business works, isn't it? But I really like this mission. This is a cool mission, and it has a very difficult fight too, which you haven't heard me say yet, so this might be the first one for me. So, the first part is a bunch... Oh, interesting! That could have gone really badly just then. I pressed square to do the perch takedown, but the prompt wasn't on the screen, so Spider-Man just did a punch and launched himself off the platform. That's something you need to be aware of, guys. If there's no press button if there's no press button on the screen, he doesn't do it. You need to be really careful with it too. It's very particular. Like, do you see just then? He was close enough to do a perch takedown, but because the game had not told me that I could, I did a spinning kick while on a goddamn balustrade or whatever this is. So be very careful with that. It's very particular. And once again, you know, it's one of those things. It's impossible not to compare it to Arkham. Arkham was fantastic for detection. It was too good at times for detection. There were times when you should not have been able to do what you were able to do because the detection was so ridiculously generous but always efficient and always on your side. So interesting that this game opted for a more precise input, which there's part of me that prefers it because it's more skillful, but at the same time I've got all that Arkham programming that betrays me. So now that you've cleared out the stealth area, we have to use our detective vision, Spider-Man vision, spider sensors, so that we can see the boxes that we have to electrocute. We now have electrical web tool, the electric web, which is pretty good at stunning people, and it's really good at specters later on. The phantoms that Lee summons in his boss fight, it's really good at killing those guys. So don't sleep on this ability, it's pretty cool. I've never upgraded it probably gets even better. But there's one directly behind me now as well, where you have to move it's like a dumpster that you drag and it opens it up. But I haven't quite realised that I haven't got all the boxes yet, so here we go. Got to shoot a couple more. I think there's 4, isn't there, on this particular one?
Gotcha.
There we go, and one more behind you, Chris. Turn around, Spider-Man, there's one more behind. Just over there. And I always jump over the wall too, even though it isn't. It's behind the boxes, but I always jump over the wall, and I always realise it's wrong. Old habits die hard unless you kick them. This is a good bit too. I'm trying to drag the dumpster to move it, but the game's picking up literally everything else. It's like on Smash Brothers when you want the Pokeball and you pick up everything else, right? I don't want the sunflower thing. I don't want the fire flower. I don't want Mr. Saturn. Come on, dude. Get me the Pokeball. I just got knocked out. But once you're inside this vent, it's going to lead to a room where we have to do some investigative spider detecting. And these sections pretty much revolve around pressing triangle on the glowing gold things, and you'll get some information. Occasionally you have to examine stuff, and then other times you have to rotate stuff, but this is pretty much a simple one. Look at all the points of interest, and then the game's going to let you go out, and then we're going to go to another area much like this one, with a slightly larger stealth section, and then a big combat section. And the combat section is going to formally introduce the whip enemy, who, as pointed out on my stream when I was playing this game for the first time, they certainly look like that class in Mass Effect 3's multiplayer with the, the energy lashes. And what this enemy does is, he's very fancy, he's very florid, he's got really good range, and he has a hard counter to aerial Spider-Man. So whenever you're in the air, he can grab you and dunk you, so be very careful. Additionally, the way that they want you to fight him is, I think it says they want you to throw objects at him to stun him, and then get the fight going, but you don't have to do that. Much like a lot of the enemies, if you perfectly dodge him, you can then launch him or hit him with web and beat him up. But there's plenty of ways to deal with them. Just know that when he turns up, he's going to be the more aggressive enemy, and he's also going to stop you from being able to jump, so you need to isolate him. And the only reason that the coming fight is even remotely difficult is because not only do they give you a nice, diverse set of enemies to fight against, which I love, but they introduce a whip guy while the wave is still happening, which is very challenging, and then of course they do the thing that ruins it, whereas they spawn a guy with a gun 30 meters to your left, so when you try to go for him, you might get grabbed by the whip dude, and vice versa. If you try to focus on other people, you'll get shot. So it introduces an interesting combat puzzle, but the puzzle's very simple. You must get rid of the gun guy, and then you must get rid of the whip guy, and then everything else is up to you. But before the guy with the gun spawns, the fight is amazing. It's just, once again, they ruin it with guns, and I don't know why they do it. I can understand if from the beginning the gun people were there and you could just then go and fuck them up, but the fact that they spawn just to be dickheads it's just the edge of poor taste, in my opinion. But here is the second of the stealth sequences. This is the larger one. I personally prefer to go for the harder room first, which means jumping over here, because if you make a mistake, you don't have to do all the easy shit again, so I save the easy stuff for the end. But I swing over here, and then I take this guy down. I've no idea how nobody hears that, because he's not exactly subtle. And then we're just going to divide and conquer, and apparently somebody triggered my spider sense just then. Not entirely certain who it was. I've been watching the animated series again while I've been editing this. I've been watching the first season of the classic Spider-Man show from 1994, and the spider senses in the show always gave it like a black and colourful background that framed Spider-Man. And I wonder if at some point Insomniac tried to recreate that and it didn't work, and then it instead opted for the white symbol above his head. Because I would have really liked to have seen it be quite similar to the one from the cartoon, because I feel like it's just so iconic to me and my memory of Spider-Man. But I'm not exactly very knowledgeable? That's right? Knowledgeable. Wow, I said that weird. That was confusing. But my knowledge of the comics and stuff is not good. I don't really know much about the actual canon and fiction and lore of the Spider-Man. It's just one of those things that I don't know really well. To me, I know that cartoon way more than I know anything else, so that's my frame of reference. So for all I know, the cartoon could be absolute bollocks, and it doesn't even take into account half the shit that happened in the comics, and it's completely unfaithful, even though wasn't the producer on it Stan Lee, the guy who created Spider-Man? So I hope it's faithful, but how would you have done the spider senses? Because as it stands, I feel like the biggest problem with it is because it's white, it can clash with some of the environmental colours, and it can make it difficult to see. It's one of those things where I don't really know what you would do to fix the problem that it has. Because you do get used to it, because you get used to anything if you try it enough. Look at that woman who spent a year trying to eat shit, and now she can. Like, what a wonderful goal. But you do get used to anything. And it's similar with the spider sense. After you play the game long enough, you see it in the chaos, you see it through all the colours because you get used to looking for it and your eye picks it out much better. Similarly to Guitar Hero, when you first see a new pattern and you can't read it, and then the more you play it and the more you understand it, you start learning how to read it and reading it on reaction rather than having to process, oh, it's this pattern. Instead, you just do rather than think. But once you come inside here, you have to examine some of the items, and you're going to get some information on what's going on. And then once we leave, there's going to be a cutscene introducing the whip enemy. And one of the things that the game does really well, which is interesting because it's kind of takes away some of the allure of learning the enemy. But when they introduce an enemy, it tells you in a tooltip at the side exactly on how you're supposed to fight them. So you see how it says use throwables on whip enemies to stun them, avoid air combat when fighting them? So what do? I do the complete opposite of what the game wants. I decide to fight him man on man and try and kick his ass, and he's really capable. This guy is a cool enemy. It's just a shame you fight like 3 of them in the entire game, because the game has such a hard-on for throwing dudes with fucking guns at you. And I don't get it. He is so much more fascinating to fight than a twat with an Uzi. Like, come on now, Insomniac. But here we go. Bunch of dudes, guy with a scythe and an AoE. So this is the first phase as well. On this phase, you can just throw things at them and then web them. The moment the phase changes and the next spawn turns up, I'm going to move into cover so the guy with the gun can't shoot me. And I'm just going to take my time here, dodge the people, knock them in the sky, chuck them into the ground, and just have fun with these enemies. Because this is an amazing fight. He's just spawned. See him? He's over on the left with the gun. Oh, no? Interesting. I thought I was going to... I'm not going to. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fuck him up. You need to be careful, though, because when you're in the air, the other whip guy can totally take you out. So... Oh, he survived as well. Am I going to run now? There you go. So, this is just smart play here, guys, because the guy with the gun has to cover distance to shoot you, and he'll do it, because for some reason, they're really aggressive. It's kind of hilarious. Look at him throwing grenades at me and shit. But there's the grenade. Grenades are super powerful. Oh, it's such a good fight, and then they put a gunman in, and he's just... Hi. Like, you know when you go to a party, and there's that one dude nobody wants to turn up, and he always turns up? That's who that gun guy is right then. But using some gadgets to show you that the gadgets are incredibly powerful. That is an awesome fight, minus the gun, dude. Like, those whip men change the dynamic of the battle so much because you immediately feel threatened because you can't jump anymore. It's so interesting. And they don't use them. It's crazy to me. It's so crazy. Thank you for watching. You take care now.